part of the construction company that we run, like High Construct, we do granny flats, like secondary dwellings.
Yeah.
The number one question I get asked is if I'm building a granny flat for an investment on an existing property, like say a large lot, say Gold Coast hinterland or an older suburb where you can put a secondary home on it, or a granny flat as it's known. I'd love to ask you, like, when's the best time to build it and how's the best way to manage it? So can you answer those two? Like, how would you rent it out the best way and when would you do it if you had the
best
option?
time to build it, best time in between tenancies.
Okay.
Especially, you can build it with a current tenant, but best time is in between. You might need to do some maintenance perhaps at the main house as well, so you could use that time. And how fast do you build granny flats now? So
about 14 weeks.
Yeah. So obviously downtime with rent, but best time would be in between tenancies. In terms of releasing both of the properties, you want to make sure the key thing is privacy and access. So people live in houses and not units because they don't want to be on top of each other.
I wanted to ask you, what's the best layout for the highest return? And we'll jump back to how would you rent it out the best way. But leading on from that, what would be the best layout or the key things that people value to give you the highest rental return and have a happy tenant?
So fencing. People generally looking at houses may want outdoor or yard space. So if you're able to split the block so both can make use of the land there and have like clearly defined areas of this is the granny flat exclusive use and this is the main house. So putting up some kind of fencing in that regard that also gives the people in the granny flat, which is normally at the back, right?
Yeah. So sometimes at the front on large lot residential, like you got the main house at the back and build the secondary dwelling at the front.
Will be walking past someone else's house to get to their property.
Yeah.
So making as much as you can those entrances private as well. In terms of like shared costs, so you can't charge water for either tenancies because it's not separately metered, and you can't use sub-meters, which is a massive misconception under the tenancy legislation.
Okay.
It has to be a meter that is installed and approved by the authority, and you have to now provide with the new legislation the water rates bill with the invoice that you send to tenants. So sub-meters are not read by council and the readings are not on the bill. It's something that people have to manually read themselves. So that's not considered separately metered under the legislation. So you can't, unless you separately meter the granny flat and the house through council, which is an application and a cost through council, then you can't do it. So you would just simply ensure that the rent price is reflective of your water expense.
Okay.
Hard to know at the start because you don't know what those tenants are going to go through, right?
Yeah, true.
Because you could have the granny flat using more water than the main house.
Depends who's living.
Because it's not the size of the house, it's the people living in it. So,
but I guess you average the cost out on tenancy, like people per dwelling, and you could calculate it out that way and past it.
I think even the water rates tell you the average household use.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. And then they tell you your average that they're hoping that you'll use instead. With that solid line, it's always above. Okay, so that's water. So what about power?
So power, you can actually put whatever agreement you want in the lease. So it comes down to, again, you could have separate meters for the power, and you could have a clause in the lease that says, well, first of all, you could just say power for the main house is going to pay 70% of the bill and the granny flat's going to pay 30%.
Okay.
So in those scenarios, it's best that the owner keeps the electricity in their name, and then they send us the bill, or we just have the bill to our email each month, and we invoice the tenants for the power, and the power just gets paid from the rental monies. Or you could have separate meters. So you could have a clause in there that says that the meters will be read each month or each quarter. And you could attach the photo of the meter and you could attribute the power exactly to what each person used. As long as it's in the lease at the start of the tenancy, then whatever agreement everybody agrees to is fine.
So this sort of comes down to how it's managed and when to do it. And I said 14 weeks for the granny flat build. So just to clarify, if anyone's listening to this, it takes 14 weeks to build it. Doesn't mean you can't lease out the front house after the first month, month and a half, when all the big bulky works of the granny flat are done, and we can just use the access that the tenant would be using for the granny flat anyway to finish it. So you're not losing 14 weeks of rent.
And depending on when a fence, like if the big stuff is done and you're able to get the fence up, then it becomes two separate properties, and there's no reason why you couldn't rent the front house out, and you don't have to serve entry notices and things like that because it's not that property anymore.
It's already defined.
It's two.
And so, to clarify the technicality of that, it's still in the same title for a secondary dwelling. So a granny flat, you're not splitting the title off. It's the one title, one property with council, hence the one water meter, but you're redefining the two zones. And that's like you said, the first thing we do is foundation, get the frame up. Get it cladded. It's a lock-up stage of any construction. Build the fence, and then go, hey, we're ready to go. We get least amount of disturbance from here.
Yeah.
That sounds really good. Cool. So it's just about a property manager knowing how to lease out. I didn't realise, we're running out of time, but you pay rates, you pay water, you pay power, you can pay all of...
Body corporate,
like
insurance.
All of that.
Everything, yeah.
Everything to do with the property. You know how many people I've spoke to when I asked the questions, I'm like, I'm speaking to Rach, what questions would you ask? I'm like, I'm paying rates and I'm paying this. I'm like, you can just do all that with one onboarding.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's incredible.